Hello everybody, Dokkan Assets here. Today we are back with another animation analysis video. And ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I apologize if my voice sounds a little weird. I just woke up a little bit ago and I am recording this video. But, of course, today we are going to be taking a look at the counterpart to the Super Saiyan 3 Goku that we took a look at in yesterday's video, which you should definitely go check out, by the way. That was a very fun video to make because I'm a huge Super Saiyan 3 fan. But, of course, we had to take a look at the boy Majin Buu. I was waiting until today because not only did I have some other stuff to do yesterday, but I was waiting for somebody to upload the Dokkan anime comparison video, and thankfully the boy Gotenks came through. So definitely go check out this video for yourself. Obviously, we're going to watch it through in this video. But before we get into things, obviously, we're going to watch this one time through as well. We're also going to be including the Evil Buu in this video because I'm not going to do a separate video with the Gotenks and the Evil Buu side menu units. I'm just going to include them in this video. And as well, before we get into the shenanigans of Buu and Buu, I guess, we are also going to watch Gotenks did upload the Super Saiyan 3 video, funny enough, just a little bit before I had uploaded my Super Saiyan 3 video, and obviously my video was like already rendered and, you know, whatever by then. So unfortunately I did not get to use his version of the video, but we are going to watch the Gotenks essay comparison just real quick, only because of the fact that obviously we didn't get a comparison for it in the Super Saiyan 3 video, and then we will get into all the Buu stuff. I'm not going to show you Gotenks' Super Saiyan 3 video because I'm going to go encourage you to watch it in the description below. I will leave a link to it right here. He really cooked on this video. I did watch it myself, like obviously off camera, and it's really good. Not to mention, it is actually really interesting. Some of the references that he found were a little bit different than some of the things that Jihad found for his references that we used in his video. It was like both of the references were correct, I feel like. It was just, you know, different things that it could have been, or different angles and, you know, different places that you would have seen it from. So it's pretty interesting. So definitely go give it a watch because obviously it's something a little bit different from, you know, what we were looking at yesterday. But anyway, let's go ahead and look at Gotenks real quick and then we'll get into the shenanigans of Buu. I just wanted to include this in the video because obviously we didn't get to, you know, see this yesterday, and I honestly think that they did a pretty good job with this, all things considered, right? It's definitely nothing crazy, and you can see that they kind of changed the angles of some scenes and combined some stuff and stuff like that, but it is still pretty cool to see. And also this, I swear, unless it's just like we really haven't taken notice to it before, it's really interesting that a lot of the like sound effects are almost like directly from the manga, basically. Like even the style of those like sound effect little like text pieces, right? Even those are like ripped straight out of the source material, which I think is really cool. So yeah, overall I think they did a pretty good job adapting this Gotenks. Obviously, like we talked about yesterday, right? They kind of changed the angle a little bit for throwing them off camera, and it's interesting that they kind of used Trunks for this as well for the actual super attack. And obviously too, they did have this scene with the blast being shot, but I think the interesting thing is too, I was talking about in yesterday's video, the water is what's so cool. The water that you're going to see in a second there, right? Obviously it's a ball rather than a beam, and the water that flies towards the camera in the Dokkan version is not present in the anime version. So I think that's the type of thing where, like, sometimes I talk about where I'm like, yeah, I think Dokkan improves these animations, or at least improves them in the context of Dokkan, and I think that that is a perfect example of that. So very cool. All right, so let's go ahead and watch through Buu's animations one time through first, and then of course we will watch this man right here, and then we will go through it. As per usual, I always do like to mention in these videos, I am by no means a animation professional or an animator. I just look at these animations for fun, and always, obviously, I think I have a pretty good idea of what makes a Dokkan animation good by this point, considering the fact that obviously I look at the PNGs that makes them up, and of course I've been doing these videos for a while now, actually. I can't believe it. Like, I looked back and I was like, dang, I've really been doing this for a fat minute, huh? But anyway, so Buu's essays, right? These are really, really good. I ain't even gonna hold you. I actually really, really like these. If I'm being honest with you, this is crazy to say considering obviously I love Super Saiyan 3 and I love Super Saiyan 3 Goku. But I actually think that these might be better in a vacuum. I think overall, these might just have like more like moments of consistency. Like I still think that the Super Saiyan 3 ones are fantastic, but obviously there was a couple little things that I pointed out in the actual like, you know, animation analysis video where I was like, yeah, a little thing here, a little thing there. Nothing too crazy that would make me say that they're bad, obviously, right? I think there's a big difference between critiquing something and obviously just calling it bad, right? And critiquing it can still mean that obviously it looks really good. But I think overall, maybe it's just the simplicity of Buu's animations. I'm not really sure, but I feel like when I look at these, I'm like, yeah, I honestly think overall, in terms of like the technical aspect of this, right? The actual like animation itself, the way that it's animated, you know, not necessarily the content of it, because obviously I like Super Saiyan 3 more than I like Buu personally, but I don't know, I think it's just more consistently, you know, like solid. So that is pretty cool to see. Let's go ahead and look at Evil Buu now. We're gonna do him first just because obviously he'll be a little bit easier to do. I actually forgot that he had a counter. I think funny enough when I posted these assets, I said this was his SSR Super. I completely forgot that he had a counter. So when I make the Mega Threat, I'll have to go back and change that up. But he actually does have a counter animation, which is pretty cool. Let me actually get that on the slow-mo there. This is a pretty cool way to incorporate this animation, I will say, because obviously this is, I would say, a pretty iconic moment for Evil Buu, I think, right? The mouth movement looks pretty good, right? And obviously you have him basically just blow the attack away, essentially, right? Bam! Look at that, shielding himself. And then just a simple little Ki Blast animation, right? Nothing too crazy, but I think it looks good, right? It's very simple, and I think it works for the purpose that it's trying to achieve, for sure. When it comes to Evil Buu's regular super attack, right? We have the boy stand stuff here. He looks so funny, bro. I mean, he is just a very funny looking character, isn't he? I do like this impact frame. I think this is a very cool way to, you know, kind of like, again, mask a character actually getting hit, right? And especially, again, it's also a cool way of doing it from when a character is just like standing still, right? Obviously then it's kind of like a little bit more impactful in anime sometimes when the character stands up and you're just like looking at them, you know, the face off, and all of a sudden you've already been hit type of thing, right? That's what they're kind of going for here, I feel like, and I think that they do a very good job of that. But yeah, the animation on the kick is really good, and not to mention, I actually really like that they have that little bit of follow-up at the end. Again, obviously great little bit of minimal movement. Buu flying there is really cool, I will say. I like the way that he's animated because it's almost like he's like, you know, kicking his foot off the ground to kind of like give him more momentum a little bit. More momentum, excuse me. Obviously, this kick is pretty solid as well. Definitely can't complain. Again, like, these essays are really solid for these sidebender units. Flying up. I don't know why he feels the need to teleport after he was just flying up to where Buu was, but go off, King. We have the TUR. And then, of course, we have the boy stanced up, ready to do the Kamehameha. His big gloves look so goofy for how, like, menacing of a version of Buu that he looks. The lighting here is fantastic, by the way, especially on Buu himself, for how small that the character looks. And the Kamehameha looks fantastic. I'm not even going to lie. I like that the cape is flapping as well. It feels very lifelike and very animated, right? Again, I know we talk about that a lot, where we're like, yeah, sometimes it just feels like a little bit of a line, and even though it is a little bit more akin to that, obviously the way that it grows and, you know, obviously kind of like spews out, it kind of reminds me of like a flash animation for the far away shot, to be honest with you, like an old Kamehameha like stick figure fight or something. But obviously the close-ups then very much do a good job of kind of representing what's going on here. So I think it's very cool to see that these sidebender units, both of these guys, do have really good animations, because obviously when it comes down to it, I feel like these guys tend to get shafted quite a bit. So it's nice to see that, obviously, with that being said, right? Oops, I dropped my phone. With that being said, these guys actually got some pretty good stuff. So that is pretty cool, right? And it's definitely nice to see, because obviously these are just the random units. You're probably going to be pulling these guys more than you're going to be pulling the actual Dokkan Fest, because obviously they'll end up in the unfeatured pool. Did he do the... He did. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at the comparison for the Evil Buu counter. And for the super attack here, again, right, very, very simple, right, nothing too crazy in terms of, you know, what we have here, but I mean, again, it works for how quick this animation goes, right? Then, of course, we have this, right, obviously with the super attack, the kick comes from nowhere. Interesting, so it's not, like, exact, but that manga panel does look close. Yeah, okay, yeah, I guess that scene. Yeah, it's basically 1-to-1. I gotta be honest. Like, it looks 1-to-1 to me. Oh, this is interesting, too. Interesting. Yeah, the chalk effects. This is also another instance where, like, two characters are fighting, but instead they kind of have it be, like, you know, obviously Buu's not going to fire back at Kamehameha because he's the enemy, right? So, that's pretty interesting that they decided to do that and then just kind of have him win. Maybe that's why that ball out in the far away shot looks a little bit weird in the way that it moves. But, very interesting, though. Alright. So let's go ahead and look at Buu's animations now. Obviously, we have the intro, right? Which I forgot to slow down. I swear, every time, man. Every time. So this is a pretty cool intro, honestly. Obviously, Babidi and Deborah are not here. And I think they're both present in the scene. Obviously, at least Babidi is. I don't remember exactly. But with Buu's egg just kind of slamming down into the ground. I think that that is a great way to do it. And obviously, you know, Buu's egg was a whole big thing in the Buu saga where it's like, oh, you know, they need to gather energy and then pump it into the egg. So it's cool that they include it here, obviously, then as a way to introduce him. And like quite literally in the anime, the way that he gets introduced is like this, with the egg breaking open. And then obviously the pink smoke coming out. And of course, then we have Buu form up in the sky. They do fade to white in between these, but I think that's fine, right? Like, I don't really know what else they would have done besides just like a camera angle panning. But the smoke looks really good. Obviously, it forms into Buu, and you have the iconic Buu with him throwing his hands up in the air, which is pretty cool. This animation is very, very simple, but I think it works well for what Buu is, right? It definitely introduces you to the character here, and I don't really have any complaints. It's super simple, but I think it works really, really well, to be honest with you. And again, especially for the functionality of an intro animation in Dokkan, I think it also does a very good job of, you know, accomplishing the purpose that is a intro animation. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at the intro, actually, in the comparison here. We're basically going to be doing these back and forth, right? So we have the egg slam down, rolls around a little bit. Yeah, that's right. I forgot that it happens here. Yeah, so then it cracks open, right? I love all of these different, like, references that iKevinX puts up. He always does such a good job of, like, putting up the anime and the manga, which is really cool. Yeah, and obviously, basically just directly referencing... Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot about that with Deborah. But yeah, so pretty cool, honestly. You know, literally no complaints from me. I think they did a very good job, right? I don't really know what else they would have, like, done to... like add to this, I guess, right? I don't really know what else they would have done. I mean, it basically is like 1-to-1, so I think they did a very good job with that. Alright, so let's go ahead now and look at his active skill. Obviously, this is going to be the, I'm sure this is going to be the favorite animation of a lot of people because it's very, very funny. And not to mention, obviously, the music. People were going nuts about the active skill music because it's so goofy. So we have Buu walking up. This looks fantastic, by the way, with him kind of just dancing around, getting closer to the screen. I really, really like this. I'm not going to lie. I think they did such a good job with it. It's so funny. They did such a good job with him just kind of waltzing up all casual like, right? They did a very good job of animating Buu and making him feel very like springing and happy, which is definitely very akin to his character. Obviously, we have him talking about making him a cookie, right? And then, of course, we have the little beam fire off. The background effects are really good here, too. And obviously, we have the blast fire at the enemy before they get made into a cookie. Now, obviously, the cookie is not going to be shaped, even though I would love if they had a sprite for, you know, every character in the game for the cookie, right? Just having this generic cookie obviously is fine enough. I think it would be awesome, and I know they definitely have the money for it. Obviously, it doesn't all get allocated into Dokkan, but it would be cool if they had a cookie for every character in the game. But obviously, it is kind of a lot to ask, right? Because, of course, that would mean even every new character that doesn't have, like, a sprite already in the game, you'd have to add one for just the specific essay. And obviously, that's a lot of characters to add, but I don't know, bro. They make billions of dollars. I know it doesn't all go into Dokkan's pocket, but anyway. Regardless, the cookie does look good. I think obviously for choosing like just a generic cookie shape, I think that that works pretty well. Obviously you have it fall into Buu's hands, and not to mention, right, for that particular thing, they'd have to do all these different angles of the cookie, because obviously they do a little bit of rotoscoping on the cookie as it goes into Buu's mouth, which is pretty cool. I will say that I was really impressed with how like the angles on the cookie looked with Buu grabbing it, right? It kind of actually twisting. It's funny that they don't show it going in his mouth. I guess maybe this is an instance of like, yeah, the budget kind of ran out, or they just didn't like have the time, or, you know, whatever the case may be, to actually animate the cookie being like, you know, put in his mouth, because like it feels kind of strange that it just cuts right here. I'm not gonna lie. I don't think it's a bad thing, right? I think it's fine to kind of have it progress a little bit faster, but it definitely feels a little bit off that he's like, ah, and then they're just like, all right, now it's in his mouth. I don't know. It's a little weird. Maybe it's just supposed to make it a little bit more climactic. That's kind of what they imply with like the little bit of like the anime speed lines there. But I don't know. It is definitely a little bit off-putting, I will say. But this shot is extremely funny. This shot is very, very silly, with obviously Buu having the cookie in his mouth all elongated, because obviously he's a stretchy boy. They have the little crumbs of the cookie. I didn't even notice that. Let me go back to that. Hold on. Yeah, you can see there's crumbs on his cheeks. That's so cute. That's funny. Yeah, so they have the little cookie crumbs there. Obviously, he's speaking a little bit. And then, of course, as he crunches down the cookie, they have his face contort a little bit. And I really like all of the springiness of the animation here, right? Like, everything on display for really giving you a good idea of, like, hey, this character's, like, you know, body is very squishy and very stretchy, right? Obviously. Fit Majin Buu so well. I think they did a great job really kind of like emphasizing that for him in this particular animation. Not to mention the end is like, I'm not gonna lie, bro, it's so adorable. Like, I don't know, obviously Majin Buu, like, you know, can be threatening, but he can also be kind of like a cute character. He's just a big pink guy, right? But this shot right here is so adorable, man. I just want to give him a hug. He looks so happy. But anyhow, that is the active skill animation. I will say, I think one thing that they really nailed about these animations for sure, especially with the fact that obviously in a little bit, we're going to obviously see it with the revival skill and the super attack animation. But I think it obviously being at this animation, they did a very good job of giving you that mix of Buu's like friendly and almost like adorable, you know, kind of like self or side, but then they also did a really good job encapsulating in this unit Buu's more menacing and evil side. I know he's Buu parentheses good, but, you know, I think they did a very good job capturing both sides of that, not only with the animations, right? This one being obviously the more like goofy side of Buu, and then the rest of what we'll look at being a little bit more of that, you know, intimidating side. But even with the OSTs, right? Obviously this OST is so goofy, right, for this guy, and all the other OSTs are a little bit more like menacing. So I think they did a very good job of kind of giving you the best of both worlds of Buu for sure, which is really cool. All right, so obviously in terms of referencing the anime, I mean, like, yeah, bro. You know, what can I say? Again, Dokkan's basically like 1-for-1 on these. I swear, every time I watch one of these comparisons, I'm just more and more impressed at the anime accuracy every single time. I saw it. Oh! Yo, that's so funny. We just talked about this. I saw many talking about making a single cookie for every anime sprite, even if Dokkan has the money. I think the system, I think the way the system is built, it would bring more bugs than needed. Not to mention they would be more pressure to update the sprites for everyone. I think they could try something like that, though. What do you think? Yeah, interesting. I didn't even know he saw that. That's funny. Yeah, I think it would be cool, right? I mean, like, I don't know. This is one instance, to be honest with you, where it's kind of a toss-up for me, because, like, obviously all of this, yes, I was going to take this in a little bit of a different direction, actually. I low-key think, honestly, this could have been one instance where I kind of would have just preferred them maybe to just have it be a Deborah cookie. It's kind of funny, because I know sometimes with these Dokkan animations, they really like to pick and choose, making something a little bit more general, and making something be able to fit a lot more of the characters in the game, and then making something hyper-specific to the scene that, like, doesn't really make sense with other characters, right? it feels like they go back and forth on what they do a lot of the time, because I swear, especially in these animation analysis videos, half the time I'm like, yeah, this is something that they're doing to make it more generic in a good way, though, to obviously fit all the different enemy characters, and this is something that does not make sense in the context of any other enemy, but they're including it anyway because it's referencing the source material, right? And so they just wanted to have it there, or, you know, maybe that was just the best way that they felt like it should be executed. So it's kind of interesting that they really pick and choose with that sometimes, and I feel like I don't know, man, I really want them to just like pick one or the other, because I feel like both are decent. It's kind of just like, what do you prefer? I suppose it's like, do you prefer the anime accuracy with the individual animations, or do you prefer making it more in tune for like the game and having it be more, you know, like attributed to that, where it's more dynamic so it fits with more characters that are present because it is a video game, right? I guess that's just kind of your preference, but I do like the cookie. I think that what they did was fine, the way that it's executed, but it would have been kind of cool if the option that they just decided to go with instead was literally just making it a Deborah cookie, even though obviously for every character that isn't Deborah, it kind of wouldn't make sense. But again, they've done stuff like that before where it's hyper specific and it doesn't make sense for the, you know, other enemies that you fight besides the one that would be in the fight from the scene that they're taken from. So I don't know. Anyway, moving on from the whole cookie thing, it would be cool too, obviously, to see all the different characters styled like all these different cookies, because obviously, like, the, you know, Majin Buu cookies do have a specific style, excuse me, to them. Oh, he doesn't have the tongue. That's unfortunate. Yeah, so obviously, again, very, very nicely done, right, in terms of the whole, like, chewing thing. Yeah, very, very good. He does not lick his lips, which is a little bit unfortunate, because that would have been funny to see. But yeah, overall, again, very, very good. Very solid references. I think they knocked it out of the park with the animation for sure. Okay, so we now have the revival skill, right? Which obviously they use the ancient tech Majin Vegeta for this. I think it's just because his animation is so short. Then that way they don't have to have the, like, you know, full, long, modern version of that in the, you know, video that's supposed to be displaying Buu. But anyway, for the revival skill animation, we now move into this shot right here, where we obviously have the pink gum on the ground, which does look pretty cool. The way that it moves is so disgusting, but in a perfect way, because obviously it works so well for what Buu is, right? I think the way that this is animated is so well done. The, like, disgustingness and making your skin crawl watching this is so well done, because of, like, you know, you watch this just be like pieces of, you know, just like goo on the ground, and then watching it take form into Buu. Like, you can see his form beginning to take shape in the beginning before obviously then, you know, coming into full color, and not to mention obviously into full shape. The animation on all of these Buus, right, on the one in the foreground here, and especially too on the one in the background there that kind of appears as well, super good, right? I was really impressed when I saw that. This is also very funny animation with all of the Buus coming out of the hole in the ground, right, to attack the enemy, and obviously, or to attack the enemy rather, to rejoin back with their big glob. That's what it was. Obviously, this animation is very silly, but I think it works really, really well. And the way that they do this is actually pretty well executed. I like that they have the, you know, like, obviously after they all kind of fly into the middle, you have this shot of them kind of conjoining. And funny enough, the ones in the background, they do a good job of hiding this, because obviously there's like 4 of them here. You can see it right here, right, where obviously you have the other 2 in front, but then as this obviously progresses a little bit, right, you then see that they kind of just disappear behind the capes of the ones that are closer to the screen, which I think is a great way to do it, honestly. It's a very, very cool, like, you know, basically just way to mask it without them having to animate them actually disappearing. Now, I think the only thing that I could, like, really critique here is I think this part looks really, really cool, right? With them obviously kind of merging together into one blob, right? I think that looks really good. But I will say this transition between this asset that's clearly like the 2 of them kind of combining to this one with the lineage being a lot more dark and obviously the pink being a little bit of a darker shade definitely kind of trips up my eyes a little bit. And I did notice it the first time that they just fade in between seen this. I swear when they do Majin Buu animations, they do this a lot. Like, they still haven't, after all these years, necessarily nailed how to do some of this slime exactly. It looks so good, basically, in everything up until this point. But I think this one was just the one that really caught me off guard. And it doesn't help by the fact of, you know, again, the coloring and the lines of, you know, the blob that then appears. But the animation on this looks fantastic. Obviously, it basically just looks like giant chewing gum. And yeah, I really don't have any complaints with this. It looks absolutely rancid, but it works, right? And obviously, you then see Buu come back into form. And it is kind of interesting, by the way. They do sort of like skip over Buu like actually coming into form. You can obviously see his body, right, like beginning to take shape in the, you know, like darker pink. But he gets to about this point, right? And then you see that they just cut to this. Again, I do kind of wonder if this is a thing of, like, not like cutting corners, but like, you know, time or money constraints or something like that. Because I feel like it's like, well, this one, you know, I would think they would just have him take full form and then go to here. But I don't know. It's, again, not the worst thing in the world. You know, it gets the point across. It does it, you know, fine. And it is definitely a little bit of a nitpick on my part, right? Like, it's certainly not anything that I would, you know, say, like, even really dampens the essay. Obviously, I'm just pointing it out for the sake of pointing it out. But yeah, then we obviously have Buu go, Boo! Which looks really good as well. And interesting fun fact, by the way, they did use the same exact voice file for this Buu, like, screaming Buu, and then the one in the intro where he says Boo here. It's the exact same one in the game's files. Obviously, I don't think there's a problem with that. I mean, he says it in the exact same way. He's just saying his name. Like, I don't really think that that one's anything to get up in arms about them reusing stuff. I mean, he literally says Boo in both those scenes in the same exact tone. So, like, why would they bother recording two voice lines for that? You know what I mean? I think that that's one instance of, like, reusing stuff that I think is just fun. All right. Let's look at that counter animation now, or counter animation revival. I keep thinking it's a counter because every time I see the KO, and my brain goes like counter. But yeah, I think they did a really good job of this, right? Obviously, they mimicked the anime very, very well in terms of like the whole scene of the Buu's kind of taking into shape, and obviously even in the manga, right? That shot right there specifically too looks so good. Obviously all of the little Buu's fly in, right, looks really good too. Obviously all of them joining together once again. It is kind of interesting. I feel like the Majin Buu saga style is almost like a little bit more simplistic, and the colors a little bit more washed out than how they portray the Buu saga in Dokkan, which I think is really interesting. I don't, not like washed out in a bad way, by the way. I mean, like, obviously the colors is what I'm talking about, right? Like, look at how, like, a little bit, well, maybe not washed out, because I guess it depends on what we're looking at, right? Like, this color pink for the anime looks a lot more washed out than the color pink that is on the, you know, Dokkan version, but the sky is obviously a lot more brighter in the anime version. So I guess it kind of just depends on what you're looking at. But either way, though, right, I still think that even though it's not exactly the Buu saga style, right, because I think the lines are a lot more simple than they are in Dokkan, right, like the line work on the art, I think that it still does a very good job of encapsulating the, like, essence of basically what the Buu saga is. So I think that is very, very cool. But let's go ahead now and take a look at the final animation. I feel like we're cruising through Buu. I don't know. I swear it's like a lot of the times that's the wrong Majin Buu. I swear a lot of the time when I look at these animations that like are very simplistic but are just like good, I have a lot less to say about them because there's a lot less to critique or analyze. But I feel like that's a good thing, because then that just means that they're solid all around, right? It just means that there's nothing really to, you know, I mean, very good that there's nothing to complain about, right? But just saying, yeah, they look good, right? Solid animation, I think is a very good thing. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at that super attack now. So I'm glad they included Buu's arms flailing. I didn't even notice that the first time that I watched this, to be honest with you. And again, by the way, I know that they've been kind of doing this, and I've said this a bunch of times. It's almost like a little mini pseudo intro animation. Maybe not this one as much, but again, I know I've mentioned this in a lot of my videos where it kind of feels like they have an animation where it like happens before where the essay might like have actually started, right? Because like this is just an extra scene that's almost included, because they could have just started it from here when he lifts his hands up, right? I think that's really interesting that they've been doing that a lot lately. But anyway, Buu lifting his hands up to the sky looks good. He looks so adorable, bro. I know he's like an absolute like monster, but he's so adorable, bro. Anyway, Obviously, hands up to the sky. You then transition to this animation of these ki blasts being fired off, which I really, really like. I love the way that they look so dynamic, right? In the way that they're moving up. Obviously, the animation on Buu himself looks good, and I like this camera angle change. Also, the little bit of like the anime speed lines does look really good too. Obviously, kind of emphasizing Buu. But anyway, obviously the enemy sprite then gets a little smacked by one of them. I will say, I do think that this explosion effect is a really old Dokkan explosion effect. I mean, it works well for like a yellow ki blast striking the enemy, but like, man, it just like makes me think of the really old super attacks. It might not even be exactly the old explosion effect, but it just reminds me of that when they had like, you know, the generic Kamehameha and then the little explosion that would hit the enemy and then they smack against the screen type of thing, right? Good times, though. But anyway, obviously the enemy flies away. I will say, I want to see how this looks in full movement, because that does look a little bit weird from the sprite aspect in the way that they move. So when they get hit, yeah, I don't know, having them, like, get hit and then pause doesn't really make sense. Like, they should fly away immediately when getting hit by the ki blast. They shouldn't be still stuck in there and then fly away. It looks kind of comical the way that they fly across the screen for this animation, I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, that kind of doesn't really make sense in my head. Let me know what you think about that in the comments, because I'd be curious. I'd be curious to hear what you have to say. But obviously we have Buu teleport in. I like that they have his cape flapping in the wind the entire time. That is such a good touch, and again, something that makes these animations so much better, right? Something that's so simple, but again, it makes them feel so much more lifelike rather than just static PNG. But anyway, we obviously have Buu outstretch his arm here. And it's interesting the way that they execute this, right? Because obviously they do cut from here to here, which I think is fine, right? Obviously, again, it, you know, emphasizes the springiness of Buu's arm. You have Buu extend his arm out like this, and then it is kind of interesting because they do then just kind of insert this asset of his arm stretching, but again, I think it works well. And then they cut out. And I think that this is actually a great way to do this, because not only is it like you're now focused on the impact of the punch, but obviously you can see the asset changes a little bit in terms of the style, right? Like the lines are a little bit thicker on this one compared to the outlines on this one, right? It kind of looks like a weird 3D thing with his hand. His hand actually looks kind of weird, but obviously it looks like, you know, it works well for this because obviously the effects are covering it, and you're not really seeing it on the screen for too long. And then, of course, it stretches back a little bit, which is also a nice touch, I will say. Having it kind of retract, I guess would be the best word, right? Back into his body like that, right? After the punch is obviously thrown. That's pretty cool. I will say, this is probably the only thing that I thought looked a little bit like, in Buu's animations, realistically. Like, when I watched through these, this was the only thing that I was like, And it's not even anything crazy, and I'm sure that this is literally just going to be me on this one, to be honest with you, because I know that, like, this is really not that big of a deal, and I'm telling you that right now, because even I don't think it's that big of a deal. But the way that Buu's arms move, I feel like could have been animated a little bit better for that particular shot right there. When you look at it in full motion, it kind of reminds me of older Dokkan animations, and the way that they moved characters' arms getting into place for the Kamehameha. It doesn't look natural to me. It looks a little bit more like, yeah, the segments, let me go back to Buu's arms. It looks like the segments of Buu's arms, right? Like the upper arm, right, from the shoulder connected to the elbow, and then, you know, the, like, elbow connected to the wrist, and then the hands, right? To me, it kind of looks like you can tell that those are just three separate pieces that they're kind of going and kind of creaking together, almost like it's like a marionette puppet that you're basically adjusting its arms, essentially, is kind of what that reminds me of. Again, I don't think it's terrible. I don't think it's bad. It just kind of looks like the way that it moves to me really reminds me of those Dokkan animations where, you know, back in the day, the way that they used to move the arms is they had all those individual pieces and then they would just kind of shift them in that way and it wouldn't look as natural, right? It just kind of reminds me of that. Again, I don't think it's anything to really write home about. It's just something that I wanted to point out because it's something that I noticed when I watched these for the first time. But anyway, after we have Buu pull his arms back, I like that they have him move forward a little bit too, shifting a little bit in the sky. That's a very nice touch. As the Kamehameha forms, Buu's pants also begin to flutter, which is awesome, right? Obviously, the cape fluttering in the wind, and I like this little effect that they have as the Kamehameha, or I guess the pink Kamehameha grows, right? Obviously, they have it kind of explode a little bit before showing the card art. Also, so funny that this is that's Vegeta's technique, Goku face. But obviously, you have this fire off, and dude, we gotta take a look at that impact frame there. Look at this, bro. Look at this. Let me go back to this. Let me go back to it after the card art. Here we go. The impact frame here is so cool, dude. So obviously they have the pink appear first on the screen to kind of like, you know, wipe over it. But this frame, dude, oh, that is so sick. I love the way that they introduced this Kamehameha back into the scene. That is so cool, right? Obviously, after that, they then have basically all of this crazy pink aura behind Buu. And I love the way that they do this because it kind of like emphasizes just how powerful Buu is. Because obviously you're thinking like, oh, well, it doesn't really make sense if there's energy behind him. But it's just like he just has that much energy overflowing everywhere that the energy is basically like enveloping him is essentially what we're looking at here, right? With all these little almost pixie dust effects, right? Obviously, you can see that then the energy envelops him there as the blast flies forward, and the blast also looks fantastic if I do say so myself. Again, very dynamic, very, you know, like interesting in the way that it moves. It doesn't just look like a straight line. You have it wiggling a little bit like that anime kind of style. Looks great. And then, of course, you have it approach from the back and a very nice shot of Buu from the back as well. Obviously, the beam kind of disappearing before you then get this little explosion effect with this very Buu Saga-esque background as well. And obviously, this will also end up being Buu's KO screen for his super attack as well, which is pretty cool. I will say, I do kind of think that they could have maybe done something else for just the way that it disappears because it just kind of fades away. I need to see if that's how it is in the anime, though. Well, let's go ahead and take a look at that, actually. Speaking of which, so let's go here is where we're at. Yep. Right after this animation, right? So obviously we have Buu's arms fluttering, which I'm glad that they included that, right? Again, this shot for shot looks fantastic, right? Nothing to complain about here. Yeah, it's kind of interesting, right? Because obviously that makes maybe a little bit more sense why the character looks so weird flying away in the Dokkan version like that. Because obviously, you know, Goku's basically just deflecting these blasts, and then Buu appears next to him, right? When obviously he's deflecting the blast. So maybe that's why that looks a little bit strange. But anyway, obviously the elongated punch, right? The Kamehameha, well, the pink Kamehameha. Whoa, where's the glitch? Oh, that's interesting. The anime had a little bit of an error that they didn't include in the Dokkan one. That's kind of, dude, could you imagine if they would have included that? That would have been so funny, bro. That would have been so hilarious if they would have included that. I guess it'd be anime accurate. Ah, it's Vegeta's technique. I'm glad that he included it in there too. That's really funny. But yeah, dude, even the impact frame is right out of the anime, which is so cool. I always like the iKevinX pauses on those impact frames. It looks good. Okay, so that makes sense, right? I guess why they have the, does he have a KO screen? This would look so evil. Oh, yeah. I would have to look at the assets. I'm actually not sure. I would definitely have to look at that for sure. I don't know if he actually has that. Yeah, that's a good point that he stances up like that afterward. That would be a cool KO screen. I mean, either way, obviously the fact that he'll be still like, you know, stanced up like this will be a cool KO screen regardless, even if they don't have that special one there for him. I did not pay that much attention when I was like looking at the SA to find the KO screen because I didn't even think about that. So very, very interesting. I'll have to see if I can look through and find that. But regardless, though, I guess that makes sense because obviously for this actual shot is kind of interesting because it moves past Babidi, right? And obviously you have, you know, kind of referencing this shot as well. But obviously the background here and the, like, you know, wind is with Babidi looking at the animation because obviously Buu is over here, right, looking at it. So it makes sense why, I guess, when I was talking about that the blast just kind of like, you know, fades away. I guess that makes a little bit more sense because obviously, you know, it doesn't really like happen in that exact way in the anime, right? But anyway, thank you, iKevinX, as always, for providing us with the fantastic comparison videos. Again, definitely, please go check out that Super Saiyan 3 video that he did yesterday. Again, it's a little bit different than Jihad's, and I think it's definitely worth watching because obviously both of them always do a fantastic job with the comparisons. I always like watching both of their stuff because it's interesting seeing the different things that they, you know, have as the references and the different things that they point out. But with that being said, the boy Buu, man, I think they cooked. I think they absolutely cooked on our boy. I'm very, very happy that they did because obviously, excuse me, Buu has not really had, I mean, I guess technically like tech transforming Buu, but obviously it wasn't really like focused on good Buu, right? So I think that having a unit like this is really, really cool. Obviously a modern animations Buu, all the animations look crisp, super well animated, right? I think another thing that is super great with these is the consistency, right? I think that the consistency of how great these look is really a key factor in just how great everything is that's on display here, right? I was talking about this with the Ginyu Force. I talked about this with Super Saiyan 3 Goku as well. it really feels like that they have been refocusing their efforts, right? Maybe not on all of the animations that we've gotten this year, but it really feels like that they've been focusing on making each individual animation really, really good and giving us overall quality rather than giving us one animation that's like the craziest thing you've ever seen and then the rest of the animations literally stink. You know, so I really, really like that. And obviously, I would hope that they could still do these absolute bangers of animations while still making the rest of the stuff really good quality, right? I think that that would be awesome to see. Obviously, that will basically be like, you know, when we get to worldwide and anniversary for 10th anniversary, that will basically be when we get to see if that's really what they, you know, decide to kind of stick with for those type of units, because obviously a lot of the time with the big boy units, I feel like they do that. Like Vegito, you know, AGL Vegito Blue is a big example of that comes to our mind with the Vegito Special, the 18 key, because obviously it's clear that's what they focused on rather than everything else. But that being said, yeah, Buu is fantastic. I'm really, really glad that we have a modern good Buu that is good looking. You know, I think that this guy will stand the test of time as well as Super Saiyan 3 Goku for a while to come, which is really awesome. We probably won't need another Buu unit for a fat minute. I didn't even mean to do that. But, like, you know, I think you could obviously still do more stuff with him for sure. But I think regardless, right, I think it's awesome that we have all this stuff represented in the game. I really, really like what they did with this guy. I think they did a fantastic job. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. Let me know who you are going to be summoning for, if you're going to be summoning for Buu and Goku. I know I'm going for Goku first, personally. I'll probably still throw a couple multis at Buu, because obviously his animations are so good, and he's really cracked from what I understand, so that's pretty cool too. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you did enjoy, and I will catch you in the next one. Dokkan, it's out. Peace.